Hello, I'm Bonnie McDonald Dixon with Storyvan TV. It's with my pleasure I'm having a guest, Stephanie Kunkel, on today. And Stephanie has a vast experience with business leadership, business management, interpersonal communication strategies, emotional wellness, trauma in the workplace, as well as change in the workplace. She is a best selling author of Perspectives Through the Looking Glass. And, with her multi degrees, they are in leadership development, marketing, management, and a master's in leader management. Stephanie is changing the way business organizations and even politicians discuss leadership. And what I really appreciate is she also works with mental health. Wow. We're so blessed to have you here today, Stephanie. You and I have had some conversations before the interview, and I we get deep into the realms of what, your experience is. But behind all the degrees, behind all the education and the vast experience you have, there's a story. And that's what we're here to delve into a little bit today. Your story and where you are now and where you're going with your career and how you're helping others. Can you just share with our audience today a little bit about your story?
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about this in more detail in Perspectives Through Broken Glass, but my story really starts from having children. I have children, and when I was pregnant with my daughter, we had this crazy dynamic going on where I had a 12-month-old, and then I had myself, and then I had this baby that I was brewing in my belly. And what ended up happening was I started to fall into postpartum / prenatal depression. And I don't want to even say that it was me falling into that, because the depression had always been there. It takes the average person 11 years from the start of symptoms to actually seeking treatment. So what this was really a breaking point and a turning point for me. But I was dealing with a lot of chronic pain. So I have chronic migraines, have a 12-month-old baby who's going from bottle feeding to food and solids. And I'm in this place in my life where I just don't feel like a good mom. And I felt like everyone would just be better off without me. And so I did some calculations in my head, as we do when we get to that point. And I started thinking about the fact that nobody else was going to do for my kids what I wanted them to do. And so the disconnect between those two pieces of on one hand, feeling like I wasn't a good mom, and then on the other hand, feeling like, oh, well, I might not be a good mom, but I really want them to be raised in a certain way, and nobody else is going to do that. How do those two things balance in my brain? So needless to say, they didn't. And I decided to seek help for my depression. And this was back in 2011. And as I go through that process of seeking help for depression, there's a lot of different things that I had to unlearn and unpack, things that I had to kind of reprogram my brain. And I learned so much during that process. Then when I stepped into leadership as an adult, when I went back into the career force after being a stay-at-home mom for a while, and I stepped into that leadership position, I got to a point where I started realizing that leadership development and those pieces of kind of walking people through those different standpoints of onboarding and getting them up to speed and training them into leadership, they don't often include mental health. They don't often include how to work with other people. And so a business idea was born where I had the skills and the tool sets to be able to have that extra layer of compassion, because I'd been there, done that. And I was actually getting called into meetings with other managers where they didn't know how to have a conversation around productivity or absenteeism or whatever with those people without creating more problems. And they were nervous about that conversation. And so I was pulled in to those conversations, and I just said, if these people need my help, There are a lot of other people who probably need my help. And let's go. Let's go and do this. And let's create leaders who are more compassionate so that as we spend 34 hours a week at work, we can be a little more happy and relaxed and not so stressed out and burnt out.
Oh, wow. That's an amazing story because in listening to your story, I heard my own sister's story play out. She just retired. She worked in an office with 200 people, and it was always something going on. And I think that even if there's more than one person in the room, you need those skills that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because we all come from different perspectives, and that's
Yeah.
what you're all about
Mhm.
is perspective. And so what I'm hearing you say is when you were brought in, you were not only neutral, more than neutral. You were able to help them see their perspectives and bring them together to
Mhm.
have a commonality, a way to speak to each other, and to create solutions versus distance and angst for people. Because so many people say, "Oh, I hate my work. I don't want to go to work. I wish I was doing something else." A majority of people, because they don't have the skills. And so, share with us. You helped in the workplace, but then out of that, you created several things. You wrote a book, a top-selling book, and then you've also created something else. And so, can you share a little bit about the book and then what you're actually working with now to help ultimately millions of people in future?
Yeah, so my book is really about my own story as well as my history of leading other people. So, just some statistics for you. I told you it takes 11 years from start of symptoms to treatment. Another statistic that you might want to be aware of is that 1 in 4 people at the end of 21 were currently experiencing symptoms of depression. And the average rates beyond what we experienced with the pandemic was that the average rates were actually along the lines of 1 in every 4 to 5 people would experience a major depressive episode at some point in their life. So knowing that crazy high statistic of 1 in 4 to 1 in 5, that's 20 to 25% of people, knowing that it takes 11 years and knowing that throughout that 11 years, we're going to work on average in the US 34 hours a week at work. So we're spending the majority of our time at work in situations where we don't have the skills to communicate. We don't have the skills to assertively share how we're feeling about certain situations. And we don't have compassionate management because everything is so profits driven. And there's very little consideration for how do we have these conversations in a way that make people feel like they are cared about and that, hey, we work in business and we have to drive profits. That's a whole point of a business. So how do you straddle that line between being able to be compassionate and caring and center your employees with also driving profits? And really what it comes down to is understanding that when someone joins an organization, they want to be successful. They want to do the best work that they can. It's kind of who we are. There might be other things going on that may prevent them from doing that. But as a core person, you're not going to run into anybody who ever says, no, 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 I joined this organization so that I absolutely never had to work. And okay, I shouldn't say never. There might be a handful of people out there, right?
Stephanie, I worked for the US Postal Service for
Okay.
6.5 years. And that is what you're talking about was fascinating. Just from my experience alone on that particular company, a very large employer in the US. And people used to say going postal, and I didn't really think about it when I joined them, but I only called in sick 1 day a year, and other people call in every single day they could. I felt like I wanted to do a great job, but I would be tongue lashed if I was a few minutes late, not even knowing why I was late or anything coming back. I found that it was very uncompassionate. And it actually, I would take classes at night so I could move out of that position. And I wrote the book, How to Get a Job You Love. And in doing that, what I was asking people to do is to know where they're at and where they wanted to go and that gap in between. What I'm hearing you say is that the companies, there's a gap. And how can they? Attrition is a very costly thing for businesses.
75% of an annual salary it costs somebody to find, hire, and train.
Oh my gosh. So if they were to invest in the employees in a cost-wise effective way,
Yes.
they would ultimately save money, because I left after 6.5 years. Now they had to train someone else and, all this stuff.
And you can't replace 6.5 years of knowledge within a heartbeat, right? Like it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't. And they lost an employee that never called in sick and was on time. They lost a great employee.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is sometimes the employees, when you're working with employees and the companies, the employees, I think I've heard a lot about this, and maybe you can enlighten me a little bit. A lot of, I think I've seen it, younger people do not have what they put us elders in our mid to late 60s had a work ethic where we went to work every day and we were there. And I've heard different terms for it where they're actually just skating along as minimally as they can.
Mm-hmm.
And businesses then are
Quiet,
going,
they
well,
call it quiet quitting.
yes, the quiet quitting. Can you speak to both sides, because that's what you do best?
Yeah, so I will speak first and foremost to a company side, because they're within that work ethic, right? Companies, nobody shows up to work and says, I want to fail. And likewise, companies don't want to see their employees fail. There are a lot of things that go on within our depressed mind sometimes, if you have depression, where you feel like a victim. And so you go into work and something happens and you're like, and there's a change and you're thinking to yourself, well, they're just setting us up for failure. That's never the case, but it can sometimes feel that way when you have situations like kind of what you were going through, right? On the flip side of that, from the standpoint of saying, well, I'm going to quiet quit, that actually has to do a lot with that lack of investment from companies. So companies aren't investing in their employees financially. They're not investing in their mental health. They're not investing in they're doing what I call superficial investments. So they're investing into mental health and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in the way of saying, we've done this, but they're not actually investing, right? And they're not training their leadership teams on things like, how do I handle someone who's currently experiencing depression, and the lack of motivation that comes from that. So you have, especially as we get into the younger generations, millennial, that's what I am, and below, who have seen a buttload of traumatic experiences within their lifetimes, as I think all generations to an extent. But we also have a situation where our economy is not doing well. We are in loads of debt. You have Generation Z now who's coming up and coming into the workforce who have situations where they don't feel like they have any opportunities and they have to get a job to survive. But these companies are paying as little as possible, with as little investment into their employees from other areas as possible, because it's all about the profits. And what they're not realizing is the reason that they're not getting maximum productivity from those people is because of that. And on the other side, you may have people who are saying, well, we're going to invest into your salary and we're going to give you a raise, but they're not investing into more people or into the tools to help them to do their job. And so they're like, great, I'm getting a raise, but I'm working 60 hours a week and I feel like I'm going to collapse. And so they get to a breaking point where they're saying, I can't give anymore. And at this point, you're only going to get a portion of me because you're only giving me a portion of the things that I need to succeed. So both parties have to come to the table. And when I say both parties, I'm not saying the individual employee and the manager. I'm saying companies and employees everywhere have to come back to the table, and they have to have a conversation of saying, as an employee, this is what I need from you. And as a corporation, this is what you need to provide for me. And as a corporation, we have to do the ethical thing and actually say, I care more about my employees than I do the investors, right? And you have to care about your investors. I'm not business dumb. I understand that, right? But at the same time, study after study after study after study will tell you that when you invest heavily from training, development, mental health, good leadership, good tools, and good pay and benefits, that gives you returns on investment that cannot be matched anywhere else.
Right. You know, it's kind of funny. They don't give us a manual on how to be a parent, and they don't. Many people start a business and can grow it very large, but they actually don't have the tools or the knowledge to
Yeah.
do so. One of the people that I've always admired was Bob's Red Mill. And I don't know if you've heard of that brand, but he was 60 years old when his entire mill burnt to the ground. And he decided to go ahead and rebuild because of the employees. And
Yeah.
in his mid 80s, he gave the company to the employees because they knew it the best. Who does that, you know?
Well, and
And
I mean, that's the golden ticket, right? Like, that's a company that cares. That's a company that says, these people are incredibly important to me, to my success, to the success that I've had in my life, and I need to pay it back. And that's really what,
right.
when you look at, anthropologists have seven core moral values across the world. Doesn't matter where you're at, what culture you're in, how far removed from the global society you're in. Every culture has these 7 core values. And one of those is contribution to your community. And when you own a company, you own a community, period. When you are an owner of that, whether it's in stock, whether it's in the boardroom, whether that is being a solopreneur, my business is my community, my clients, my staff, and my leadership team. And those people in that community all need to be working towards a state of going, how can I help other people succeed? And I think that's the ticket, right? So if you have a company and you have had this amazing amount of wealth and caring and concern from this community about your bottom line and your ticket and your success, it's only right to do that thing and give that back to them. There's something to be said of for a legacy, right? If you have somebody to leave that to that you trust. But I think there's an element too of, I've heard of a couple of people now throughout the US that I'm aware of that are smaller business owners, not solopreneurs, but not large companies either. And they have started their business and seen record growth that you don't see in any other companies. And all they're doing is profit sharing with their employees.
right.
So the owner doesn't make anything more than their employees do. And when their employees get paid, the owner gets paid. And if they have a down month, they have a down month and everybody has to deal with it. And there's a lot of people in those situations that see those profits and go, oh, I did that. How can I do more?
Right.
And we don't see that very often. We see a lot of sales teams get bonuses or commissions and things like that, but support staff doesn't necessarily encounter that, right?
Right. Boy, that's a great point. So right now, what I understand is you've created something very special for people.
Yeah.
And you've taken this to the next level.
Yeah.
And can you share about your project that you've been working with and where you're going with that?
Yeah, thank you. So I do like the myriad of coaching and consulting, but in the time that I've been doing this, I've gotten a very rare privilege of knowing other experts. So experts like Anna Adams and Michelle Murder and Michelle Sheen. And there's so many of them on my platform that right now I can't go through the whole list. It's all on the website. But but within that, these people have been so amazing and uplifting and just crazy beneficial for my life and my business, that I needed to pay tribute to them. And in more ways than just saying, how can I buy more from them, or how can I be involved with them more? And there might have been a little bit of a selfishness in this of saying, how can I be involved with these people more? But I created a platform that allows people to go to a platform, get expert advice that they trust, get training from experts that they trust, and get resources. So it's an all-in-one platform that does group coaching, live webinars, pre-recorded training classes, discussions. And what we're trying to do is create a world of perspective shifters, people who can come to the table and have a conversation with two separate sides of this coin and do so in a way that is respectful and compassionate and kind and caring and is solution focused. How do we find the solutions that go into this to make the world a better place? And I'm just so honored to have these experts. Nicole Magic is another one who's just phenomenal. They have the skills, the resources, the presence. And I know personally, I wanted to work with all of them. And of course I have. But it was one of those things where I also wanted to bring everyone I knew in front of them. And knowing that, and also knowing what I know about business and leadership and mental health, it just made sense to bring them all together on a platform that everyone could access. And that was specifically designed to not just hit on business and leadership, which is my specialty. And it's kind of where the platform started, but also to hit on the other areas of life, because we're not just business leaders, we're whole people. And there's all of these different areas of life, like health and spirituality. And so how do we move all of that into a place where people can go and say, how do I round out my life? How, Bonnie, we were talking about kind of that work ethic piece. Right. And again, work is just it's a piece of the pie of life, right? And so how do you get to a point where you enjoy going to work and you enjoy eating a healthy meal and you enjoy seeing your friends and family and you enjoy going to family dinners and doing all of these other things?
You have such a great perspective there. I think sometimes the way people have grown up, different families, different things, they might not even know that can be done. Yeah. They might think, well, I'm going to work hard and then I'm real tired at the end of the day and I go home and I do whatever I do. And they might be overindulging in whatever to, kind of feel better that way. But if people knew that you can live a joyful, exciting, juicy life doing the work they love and working for a company that has ethics and they are cared about. It's all about the community and health. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm telling you, I love hearing these perspectives. Let's look at your website here on perspective shifting. And let's see if I'm not sure if I can move it.
No. Click on the other button.
The other button.
I was going to say, that's my personal website.
That's your personal one.
Yep.
Here, let's see here.
No.
Let's see. I've got my wizard here. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll show. That's your personal website, which is still a great website to go to.
Thanks.
And also, while we're talking here, we might want to encourage people when this is out to look and click and make an appointment with Stephanie, because there's nothing like actually meeting someone and finding out how what she has to offer can help you and your business. And the perspective shifting is here. And isn't that a great cute thing with the Rubik's Cube there? Because I'm actually quite slow at doing those, but I've seen people do it in 13 seconds. And then there's people in myself that I would be depressed trying to do that.
Well, I've got to give credit to Tracy Sabroff there. She's the one who developed that logo for me. And it was funny because originally I had this black hole, because that's what I call depression in my book, is a black hole. And we were kind of talking about it. And I was like, I want people to have hope. I don't want them to be in that space. And someone has said to me at one point, and I think it was Leslie Flowers, who had said, you have to have people understand and create and curate a love, a childhood like love of education and training in order to get your business off the ground. And so I'm sitting and I'm telling Tracy and I'm saying, there's these blocks, right? Like think like, I don't want like ABC blocks because I feel like that's way too childish, but like I want some sort of like building blocks. And she goes, Rubik's Cube. And I'm like, yes, because we're all about solution focused and going through the problems and tackling the challenge. Yes, that's perfect. And that's the logo she came up with. So
what fun. What fun. Well, I had a friend and she was a minister, and she often said, it's all about perspective. And she said, you can look out one way out of the house, you go to the other side of the house and look out that way, and they're different perspectives, and so years ago when some things were happening in politics, she said, well, she says you can be upset about it or you can observe it and stay calm and feel very balanced. And she said, and you can watch just like the river behind me, the water's going by. We walk there almost daily. And as the water's going by, you can dip your toe in and pull it out again. But the water just keeps flowing, And I think what you're teaching people is how to be healthy and be in the flow at work and all the other facets of our life that make us a complete whole person.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not doing this work alone, right? So I will say that in the last few months since I've been working on the Perspective Shifters platform, the people that I've had the honor of working with have completely changed my own personal perspective. And I've come to a place of loving life and loving myself even more than I thought. I thought I had it down. I was like, I got this. But even now, I recently started a very difficult fitness challenge, and I was a little intimidated by it. And the way that I have had these interactions with other people, there's this whole other tone now. And I think it's in part just being in the community and being with other people who are like-minded, of saying, I deserve to have that level of fitness. I deserve to eat a healthy meal. I deserve to be in that place. And granted, I wasn't inspired to start that challenge by them necessarily, but they gave me this whole other level of acceptance about where I am and who I am today. And that's something I would tell you about perspective. Bonnie, when I talk, and I do talks, and we're talking about communication, I tell people that at any given time during a two-person conversation, like with me and you right now, that there are always 6 people that show up.
Wow.
And that's me and who I think I am. Well, that's me as I am right now and who I think I am, and then who you think I am. And then it's vice versa. And what we find is that some people have a very negative perception of themselves, while meanwhile other people have a very positive perception of them.
Yes.
And it can also go vice versa, where other people are like, really? And then that person's like, I'm the greatest. So it can go both. But that's the thing to be cognizant of when you're standing in a situation or sitting in a situation where you're talking with someone one-on-one, is there's these different perspectives that come to the table.
Oh, you just gave me the ooey ooey's. So I was at a retreat weekend before last, and they were asking some questions. And of course, my hand always goes up for everything. But, they asked these 4 questions, and, what was my belief systems? And I said, well, I'm not quite there on this one belief system that I can do this. And all the people looked at me and said, what are you talking about? Of course you could do it. And it was shocking to me because I didn't think I could do it. But everyone else around me knew I had all the tools and all the, everything I needed. It was only here and so at the end, and they said, oh, you're so vulnerable. I'm like, whoa, I had no idea that I was going to be put on this hot seat. But it opened my eyes. Oh, I can do this. I can do this. And sometimes we just need someone else feedback, to say, yeah, you got this. You got this. You can certainly do this. And anyway, part of it is in the trying and the going for it. Do we always hit the moon? We might land amongst the stars. We just go for it and see what happens. And what if the companies that you work with I know you're going to be touching a lot of lives and a lot of companies. If you even changed one, but I'm imagining thousands of companies to do that perspective shifting, to create a much better workplace, which equals much happier employees, which equals much happier community, families,
Yes.
individuals. It's this rollout.
Yeah, it's as Lisa Evans calls a ripple effect.
The ripple
right?
effect. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's and that's exactly where it came from for me, Bonnie, when I went through this mental health crisis, if you will, and came to the point where I said, I'm in this black hole of depression and I've got to find a way to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I realized that I wanted more than just to feel good. I wanted to make an impact. And when I sat down and I started thinking about, well, how can I make an impact? What does that look like for me?
Mm-hmm.
What I wanted to see was, what are the areas that I'm good at and how do I go down the paths? And I actually developed 5 paths to go down to bring that to fruition. And there's only one path I haven't hit yet, and that's actually stepping into politics myself. And I am of the opinion that I don't know that I want to do that, but I am happy to work with politicians. And then let's ripple the effect, right?
Right.
let's let them make the impact, and I'll work with several of them, and then we'll make a bigger impact, right?
We need you, Stephanie. We need you. I tell you, that would be a wonderful place to reshape our leaders into what it really means to be a leader in shaping society for the better of all, not just a few, but the better of all. Now, what is the best way for people to reach out to you, Stephanie?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends if they're wanting to work one-on-one, if they're just wanting to have a conversation. That's definitely my website. I'm happy to book a call with you, and then we can kind of assess if we need to. I do leadership gap analysis too, where I'll go into a company and have a conversation with them and say, these are the things that you need. I call myself a leadership development strategist. So if I can't fill the bucket, I'll find somebody who can. But if they're looking to just kind of engage more, get to know me, but also some of the other experts, definitely the Perspective Shifters platform. There are so many amazing people on there. And if you're just if you're in that state where things aren't going right in one area or another of your life and you're looking for a change, that's the platform to get it.
Wow. Well, I know the people listening in today will probably themselves be curious about what you're doing, and they'll know someone or a company that could use your services. And I look forward to seeing that ripple effect, and because it is so needed today. That is for sure. We so thank you for being on Storyvan TV today.
Thank you for having me.
Sharing your heart. And don't forget, Stephanie has an amazing book that you'll want to read or buy for someone and share it with them. So we thank you again for being on Storyvan TV, and we look forward to probably your next book and your next adventure, because I know there's a lot more.
Oh yeah, always.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.